Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And we're the Film Flamers.
Bringing you another top 10. Well, actually, we haven't had one in a little while, I don't think.
That's right. The last couple top 10 episodes that we have put on the main feed were actually rebroadcast from older episodes, and we'll probably be doing that from time to time in the future.
Yeah, I mean, top 10s are a little weird these days. They're a little meta, right? I mean, people are expecting that for kind of trash content, but we actually like to put a lot of thought into ours. So we're not going to pump those out every single month, but in honor of the films that we're covering, like Carrie and The Rage, Carrie 2,
we're going to be counting down our top favorite high school horror movies. So high school has been an essential part of horror since the 50s, right? Wouldn't you say, Chris?
Yeah, I think when we started to see like the teenage exploitation or what have you, was definitely during that time where it was like the, monsters from Mars and, space cowboys from outer space or whatever the hell was going on, like the blob stuff, it was saying, oh, this is actually pretty, we can make these like, high concept films that are fairly cheap to make sometimes, and, they'll be all the rage with the high schoolers.
That's right. And so, I mean, obviously horror movies are, fairly popular with younger people, and they go and pay to see them. And so, of course, they would be featuring, people like them in the films.
Mm-hmm. A lot of disturbing behavior.
Not on the list.
Although we did cover that on Patreon. So if you're interested in what we thought of disturbing behavior, please head over there.
We definitely thought it was Razor.
Yeah. God damn it. I'd completely forgotten about that. I wiped it from my memory.
So
Razor.
When that's Razor, let's do it. To create this list, we wanted to pick movies that, sort of featured either high school students or very heavily involved a high school in the plot. With that being said, number 10 is Student Bodies.
I love this movie, and I'm so glad you hadn't seen it before I'd shared it with you.
I fucking love that movie, and I think about it all of the time, and I've had so many conversations about it with other people now, right? Like, and in fact, I've gone back and listened to that episode of ours a couple times because it makes me laugh so much, and every time I listen to it, it makes me want to watch the movie. And so, but yeah, I mean, like, this is totally high school horror. It takes place in a high school, like almost the entirety of it, and if not, it's a high school function that they're at, right? With high school students that are clearly adults, but I mean,
yeah, you got a killer named the Breather that's always complaining about gum on stairs left by students, and he's always talking through a chicken on the phone and saying click, and people are asking him, did you just hang up? And he says, no, I just said click. So there was a lot of gold to mine there.
That's right. You cannot, walk two spaces in that movie without seeing horsehead bookends. And I mean, it's just fucking delightful. So
yeah, and there's a lot there that they're spoofing, right? Especially our main deep dive of this month, Carrie, right? There's some Carrie spoofing there.
There certainly is, and I feel like Carrie gets spoofed a lot, But,
yeah.
What's the number 9 movie, Chris?
Our number 9 pick is the Babysitter series.
Woo! So these are recent watches for us, right? We didn't watch The Babysitter until after Ready or Not came out.
Yeah, because we really loved that actress.
Yes, very, very much. And that Babysitter was a really, really funny movie. It was a real good time. But to me, the second one is better, right? I just think it's like a hell of a lot funnier and goofy, right?
It goes into like full airplane mode versus the first one kind of gets there by the end. But I don't know. I like them both about equally. But you're right. The second one is a lot more over the top and campy.
Mm-hmm. But again, I mean, like, clearly these are high school students, right, in this movie, and then high school students who like worship the devil, right, or have some sort of cult going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's lots of like gore and over the top violence. It's just a real fucking good time. I love the Babysitter movies so much.
Oh yeah, Samara Weaving is so excellent in both of those movies. Of course, she doesn't really show up till the end of the second one. Spoiler alert.
I know, yeah. Sorry if you hadn't seen it, but really you should have already watched it by now. But, the trailers sort of like make it seem like she's not a part of that second movie. They have all these returning characters, but not her. But she does show up and, in quite a different way. And I don't know. I just really like both of those movies. So, I mean, and this is the kind of situation where these are just high school students, right? Not a lot of the movie takes place in the high school. Maybe just like the very beginning of each.
No. Yeah, the first one's mostly in the neighborhood, and the second one, they're kind of vacationing a little bit, or, well, on a boat, on a river, got out like a country area. But what's interesting to me is that both of these movies are done by McG.
That's right.
Randomly.
Did, like, fucking Charlie's Angels and shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was brought to fame by his music videos, right? And then he went into the franchise of the Charlie's Angels that did so well. And I think he even did like a Terminator movie that did like middling. And he kind of disappeared for me. I don't remember what else he's done. And he kind of went off the radar a little bit until he came out with a Babysitter randomly, and it was so good.
Yeah. I mean, so apparently he's, a fucking horror director now, which is good, because I really liked both of those movies. Yeah. So if you have not seen the Babysitter movies, they're on Netflix. It's easy to watch them. Go and do it. You'll be doing yourself a favor, I promise.
So, Robert, what's our number 8?
So, number 8 of high school horror is Jennifer's Body.
Oh.
Now, I know that a lot of people have sort of a love it or hate it relationship with this movie. I think a lot of the horror community is kind of torn on it, but I keep seeing a lot of love growing on social media. People sort of like rediscovering this movie. And I have to admit, the first time I watched it, I wasn't a huge fan.
I wasn't either, but I enjoyed parts of it. I need to go back and discover it again. This is written by Diablo Cody, the same woman that wrote Juno, etc. I'm not sure. I'm not hugely well versed in her career, but I know that she's well known as a writer. And so I do want to go back because I know there's also a lot of actors in Jennifer's Body that I like to see from time to time. I love to make fun of Amanda Seyfried whenever I see her. And then of course there's that stuck up bitch that ended up playing April O'Neil in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies.
Megan Fox.
That I've never seen. Yeah. Megan Fox, Transformers girl. Yeah.
Yeah. And Adam Brody's in it. Right. I mean, and it's Transformers. It's directed by Karin Kusama, right? And we covered her The Invitation. Yeah. And so, I mean, the second time I watched it, it was a couple years after it came out, and I had kind of a conversation with someone, and they told me that it's a good movie, and I was like, "No, you're full of shit. It's a shitty movie." And I went back and watched it, and I had to go fucking apologize and be like, "Yes, it's very good. I don't know why I didn't like it the first time, but I've seen it a couple times since."
I don't know. Now that you mention it, it's maybe that's it. It's Diablo Cody, and then you also got Karin Kusama, and it just feels like it's not Jennifer's Body, from those two people. But I need to go back and watch it for its subtleties, I think, because it does have a cult following.
Yeah, and there's some really gnarly effects in it. I think it's good. It's a good high school movie, right? So we're talking about, the trials and tribulations of high school students, and especially girls as friends in high school and how those relationships can be. And it's just a really, really good movie, in my opinion, right? Especially for these reasons. So that's why it made the list for sure.
Speaking of Jennifer's diseased body, our number 7 is also a Final Destination.
The Final Destination.
Right. I miss Ollie Larder.
Yeah, well, we just need to keep watching the Resident Evil movies. She shows up in those.
Oh, okay. And number 49 or 50 or
whatever. Yeah. What's her name in Final Destination? Is it Clear?
I don't know.
Her name's Clear Rivers or something like that. Final Destination. This is a high school horror movie, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Well, it's a high school trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the ones following it, right? Like roller coasters and shit like that, and tanning beds, and they're all about this high school students every single time. Pretty much. Yeah,
I feel maybe they could have some college age people thrown in, throughout the series. But the very first movie for sure is all about high school students, high school teachers, and it's not really about going to high school, but it's certainly about those aged people, right? And the differences that there are between cliques and shit in high school and having to come together to fight death, essentially, right?
It was such an inventive movie when it came out, and everyone was talking about it, and it's such good execution. To this day, I watch this film and I'm just impressed by how original it was compared to everything else coming out at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I really enjoy the shit out of Final Destination. I thought it was inventive. I thought the death scenes were really neat. The entire series really doesn't disappoint when it comes to inventive ways to kill people, right?
Yeah.
Especially, did you see the one where that guy gets suctioned to the bottom of the swimming pool? Right.
I don't know. I just remember some of like the shower curtain line and like the water like traveling across the floor. Some of it was just like really, really interesting. And the second one, of course, the opening with the roller coaster versus like the first one with the airplane. You know, watching those, you know, death scenes are always really highly orchestrated, and they get more and more intense and weird as the series goes on, I think. You know, but the whole death order thing as like a plot point, you know, and is always fun. And I don't think I've seen anything past the second one, honestly, but or the third. I think I've seen past the third, but it's such a good series. I need to finish it because I've only watched the first 2 or 3.
I liked them all. The first 3 are kind of the best one. I mean, that's not really true. I like them all, but whichever one had the fucking one with the log truck, that's either the second or the third one.
Either that's the third, I believe. I think the roller coaster is the second.
I cannot remember, but every time
I'm like reversing them.
If I see a fucking truck with logs on the back of it, though, that's the first thing my brain goes to is that movie, and I'm like, you know, like stay far, far away from it. Yeah. We need to cover Final Destination sometime on the podcast.
We need to cover all of these. Honestly, we haven't done a deep dive of any of these so far, except for Student Bodies, and I believe that was not last April, but the April before.
Yeah, that was our first quote unquote season.
Oh,
our first
interesting.
Comedy horror movie.
It's our first April comedy month episode.
But moving on to number 6, which is The Craft.
I bind you, Robert, from doing harm against yourself or others.
Oh, Chris, I am the weirdest.
We really need to deep dive this one.
For sure. Oh my gosh, I love The Craft. I have not seen The Craft in probably 10 years. So I listen to the soundtrack all the time. So I like this movie. I mean, again, set in a high school students, you know, all the things that high school girls go through, except they're witches. And
Skeet Ulrich is in this movie. Neve Campbell is in this movie.
The entire cast is great. Like Rachel True is so good in it. Fairuza Balk is good.
Fairuza Balk. Love that. I love saying her name. Fairuza Balk.
And that, I forgot her name, but the one from Empire Records where he played the lead. So,
oh, God, yeah. She shaved off her head in Empire Records, and then she actually, because of that, wore a wig for The Craft.
Oh, it kind of looks like a wig.
It does. It really does. Also, that Marsha bitch is in this movie as a racist.
That's true. That's right. She's talking about little hairs. What a bitch. God. Yeah, I mean, like, these girls were, like, mercilessly picked on. And, I mean, people got their comeuppance, you know, but I just remember when The Craft came out. I saw it in the theater. I loved it.
Good soundtrack, too.
The soundtrack is just amazing.
Well, obviously, it's iconic enough because, like, the show Charmed, like, kind of ripped off their main song.
That's
I
right.
am a son. And
that
the
amazing cover of the Smith song. Yeah. And there's, like, their random pop appearance by Jewel on there. Like, it's totally doesn't sound like Jewel at all, but...
There's a cover of a Beatles song on there, too, that's really, really good.
It's just a really good soundtrack. Yeah. And a really good movie. Yeah, you know what? We need to add this to the document.
We do.
I think I have some things to say about The Craft. Either that or I would just like to watch it again.
That's all on us.
Let's call the corners. No. Shut up, Nancy. What's our number 5 movie, Chris?
What's your damage, Heather?
Oh, another fucking movie I love that I want us to deep dive. Heathers. Fuck Me Gently with a Chainsaw. What a good movie.
Yeah, and I feel like it's been on other top 10s of ours.
I'm sure it was on top 10 horror comedies when we did it. Maybe some others. I feel like I bring Heathers up quite a bit.
It's been a special mention for our top 10 horror movie romances, too, for JD and Veronica.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I love Heathers. Every time I watch Heathers, it just cracks my shit up. It is so funny, so well written. I fucking love Winona Ryder. And like, it's probably the only movie that I think that Christian Slater's like attractive in, even though he's like a murderous asshole, right? But I don't know. Every time I think about that movie, I think about like one of those funeral scenes where the father's like, I love my dead gay son. You know? And I'm just like, it just makes me laugh so much.
Yeah. Well, they're all going to laugh at you with our number 4.
Oh, really? Carrie?
Yeah, we've knocked all these, we've beaten all these jokes to death with our deep dive this month.
That's right. We spent the last 2 episodes talking about Carrie and
her dirty pillows,
and the subsequent rage that someone else felt. So I don't know how much more we have to say about Carrie, but it certainly deserves a high place on this list, right?
Yeah, it does.
Because it really is about high school and one of those seminal high school moments.
Yeah, especially during their prom, right? I mean, that's the crescendo of the film, if you will. Well, one of a couple of Christian news.
So yeah, I think number 4 is a really good place for that, because there are some better high school movies that we'll get into with our number 3.
Maybe not better films, but certainly more high school-y. And we're going to start our top 3 with The Faculty.
The Faculty is like just one of the best like high school horror movies, because it really is like almost the entirety of it taking place in a high school, right?
And like many high schoolers, it has Wood. Elijah Wood.
That was a really good joke. I'm so glad you made that. It does have Wood. And Josh Hartnett with like a shitty haircut.
Well, and that's why it has Wood.
That's why Elijah Wood has Wood. The cast of The Faculty is fucking stacked, right? Like Clea Duvall, Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett, like we said. Fucking the teachers are incredible, like B.B. Newworth and Jon Stewart and Piper Laurie.
Jon Stewart of all people. Yeah.
But, for those of you who haven't seen The Faculty, there's something weird going on, right? There's something very disturbing behavior about what's happening at this high school. It's just a much better movie. So teachers and students seem to have been replaced. And I don't know. It's just like there's a mystery involved. Like these kids who wouldn't be talking to each other at all sort of have to like band together. And that's just the kind of thing that I want to see in a movie.
So you think disturbing behavior was like the teenage version of Stepford Wives, and like The Faculty is kind of its version of like the Pod People?
Maybe.
With Donald Sutherland pointing at you with his mouse agape?
I mean, I've been making that point all through the pandemic, right? When I see people not wearing a mask. But I think Robert Rodriguez directed that movie too. And so it's just delightful.
Yeah.
And another spoiler alert, we will be deep diving into The Faculty this September. So stay tuned for that.
Back to school.
What's our number 2 film?
Scream!
Ah! How this episode's going to sound after you edit it. Scream.
So iconic. It still stands up today, and its sequel too. Really, we should say the Scream series. Really, obviously the best of which is its first, and the sequel, which is nearly, if not as good. Which gets even more meta, which is just great. And so I love the entire cast for this. Obviously, great direction from one of the horror greats,
Wes Craven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this kind of is like one of his masterpieces, right? And yeah, I mean, I love the entire series, even 4. God help me.
Yeah.
And even 3. I think that these days people think that 3 is the worst. I like Parker Posey, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to shut the fuck
Carrie
up.
Fisher.
Yeah, and Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, I like the first 2. Even the newest one, and they're making yet another, but I mean the newest one that came out like 5 years ago or something like that, maybe older. I don't remember, but I thought it was okay, right? Really, the first 2 for me are like the essence of Scream and what this series is.
Right, and really the first Scream is the only one that sort of like fits into the high school horror subgenre. Right?
Yeah.
Because everything after that is sort of like college or Hollywood, right? But this very first movie is just about like high school students getting picked off, one by one and trying to figure out who a killer is, which is something that Wes Craven does really well.
Well, I have to say though, even when these characters are getting into their 40s, it's still about high schoolers, right? Even though the last one had, this killer was a high schooler, right?
Yeah, and the last one, Scream 4, sort of brought it back to its high school roots,
Mm-hmm.
right? With, a new set of kids in that town. Because you're dealing with like Sydney's niece or something like that, And,
Damn it.
It's Emma Roberts. So, but yeah, that first movie was just so good. I remember seeing this in the theater too when I was like 16 or 17, whenever it came out, and was blown away by it, right? And it sort of started this whole wave of, late 90s horror that would lead into things like The Faculty and Final Destination. And I mean, The Craft came before this, but
it's such an exacting tone too, though. Like, it's just got such a straightforward, earnest quality that's just like saved by its meta quality, as well as just a twinge of camp. Like I'm going to love any movie where someone's named Gail Weathers,
Yes. God bless you, Kevin Williamson, for that screenplay. I mean, like...
Good soundtrack, too. Both musically and soundtrack.
Marco Beltrami, right. Because I know that he had a couple... he had at least an entry on my part on our top 10 scores. Horror scores. course.
Unless we forget that amazing cameo by Drew Barrymore that no one expected.
That's right. No one expected Drew Barrymore to
exist in her career at that point in the 90s. Yes.
To get gutted when the start of the movie. Mm-hmm. What a good movie. I haven't seen Scream in a long time either.
I need to rewatch that.
For sure. But this leads us into our number one spot.
Welcome to primetime, bitch!
That's right. The A Nightmare on Elm Street series, right? So our number one slot is filled by an entire franchise. Because, I mean, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street series really did focus on high school kids for almost the entirety of it.
Yeah.
And in different situations, too. I mean, the first two, we get a lot of, like, kids actually in high school. And then we get to the third one where some of these high school-aged kids are in sort of a mental institution. And then back to the high school for the other ones. I mean, like, they spend a lot of time in the classroom, in the hallways, and all that stuff. It really is, like, a huge part of this particular franchise.
And it's been on our top 10s before. I believe it was in our top 10 slashers, and I think like its soundtrack got into our top 10 songs, pop songs in horror movies, like Touch Me with Wish featuring Fonda Rae from A Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Touch me all night long.
Yeah, and I believe also top 10 horror movie romances with Glenn and Nancy.
That's right. So I love The Nightmare. A Nightmare. I can't even talk. I love A Nightmare on Elm Street. The entire series. My favorite franchise. I can watch them over and over again. And not even just for like Freddy Krueger. I think like the more it went on, he got a little too quippy for me, right? But they're really enjoyable movies.
Jason versus Freddy.
Yeah, I've completely blocked that one.
I love it, except for that one stupid bitch that ad-libbed that one line in the movie, but...
That's right. Who would have thought a member of Destiny's Child would be screaming out that F-bomb? Yeah. God. I don't know. And I feel like A Nightmare on Elm Street sort of like brought teenagers into the slasher because before, well, no, I can't even say that because even Halloween had like high school students in it. Right?
Yeah, but it's just complete. That's why it's not on our top 10 because I don't want people clamoring with like torches and, pitchforks at our door. The only reason Halloween is not in this because it has nothing to do with the high school. Right, it happened to have like a high school student in it, then students, right? But nothing's in high school, nothing takes place out of high school, and it's really about, the shape.
That's right, and babysitters. I mean, but that's it. I mean, even the other babysitters, made this list because it was more high school involved.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, A Nightmare on Elm Street tops. It definitely deserves this number one spot for sure.
It does.
Do you have any special mentions, Chris?
Well, I would say like the things that are kind of obviously people do think of, but don't have to do with anything. There's high schoolers in a lot of things, certainly like Jason films and at the camp vacations or whatever the fuck. And also like little bits of high schoolers are involved in like the sleepaway camps and, other things. But it's like part of our rules was that for a high school horror, it has to have a large extent of it actually at a high school, or at least maybe one death at a high school. I don't know.
Yeah. When I was thinking about things that I would put on the list, I was toying with putting Buffy the Vampire Slayer on there. The movie, not the TV series, although both I think would be a good entry, right?
Well, yeah. We used to do special mention for Buffy almost every top 10 we did. And this would be a perfect example of that because so much of the horror in Buffy actually had to do with at the high school, underneath the high school, in the high school. I mean, the Hellmouth was under the high school.
Or just the high school experience, right? Of what it was like for those characters to navigate through high school, right? And I kind of feel like that was the best parts of the series. I mean, I liked the series after they left high school too. But, I mean, for me, those seasons before they graduated were just perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I think that just about wraps up our list. And as always, we want to know what some of your favorite high school horror movies are. If we didn't mention them in our top 10, just let us know. And you can do that on social media over at The Film Flamers on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram.
You can also email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com or call our special hotline at 972-666-7733. Let your voice be heard. Let us know what your favorite high school horror film is.
That's right. We will play those voicemails on our next Shooting the Flames episode. And we've actually got a lot of emails lately that we're going to be reading on the next episode. So keep all those things coming, guys. Like Chris said earlier in the episode, we talked about disturbing behavior on Patreon as voted by our patrons this month. So head over to patreon.com/thefilmflamers so you can find that bonus episode and all of our bonus content.
That's right.
All right. Well, I am ready for prime time, Chris. So I think it's time for us to head off and maybe have some
Sweet dream, warriors.
Oh, it's my favorite.
I bind you, Freddy, from doing harm. Harm against yourself and harm against others.
Oh, suck me gently with a chainsaw.